Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we managed to get our colony set up on the surface of Eve, and that is fantastic. We're going to hop over into the mission control real quick here and take a quick look at what we've got going on here. Is there anything here we're interested in doing? Science data from surface of Minmus is super easy money, so we can go ahead and do that really fast. What else do we have? Not a whole lot here, to be honest. Yeah, we're not going to do basically any of those. So I don't think that Eve is actually tectonically active. We'll just let this run, and if it expires, whatever. We shouldn't have any problem with that. If it expires, you know, we lose two prestige. I don't care about that. That's completely fine. Completely fine. We do, however, need to splash something down into the oceans of Eve. So let's get that science data from surface of Minmus mission done real quick. Just make that fast money. All we need to do is hop over to our Minmus colony, and we'll just transmit back a little bit of science. It doesn't even matter if it's worth any science. Completely and totally irrelevant. But we'll probably transmit back our science from our mobile processing lab, most likely. So let's go ahead and see what we've got here. Hello, mobile processing lab. Science is full. So we'll go ahead and transmit that. That'll take a little bit to transmit, so we will just warp through here. Cool. So there we go. There's that science back, and there's that contract complete. Just completely free. So let's hop on back to the Space Center. And I guess we can see if completing that contract generated us any new ones. I don't exactly know what the generation rules are for when it generates new contracts. I don't know if that's on a timer or if it always has a certain number generated. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. We'll just double check here. And then we'll work on finishing our last Eve contract. Ah, yes. This bug. Okay. Well, luckily, let's see. That's the VAB there. Mission control is here. Perfect. Can't see anything, but that's fine. Anything that we're interested in doing at this point? No. Okay. So we're just going to hop into the VAB. Fantastic. And we're going to design ourselves a craft that is designed to splash down into the oceans of Eve. But we can't necessarily guarantee that we're going to be over the oceans of Eve. So what I really want here is something that can fly in Eve. And that's going to be somewhat interesting to design. Realistically, I'm going to design this as a rocket, but it's going to end up being a space plane by the time it gets to Eve. So that'll be fine. We can do like a, I don't know, a Mark II drone core. We're going to need a better antenna than this, for sure. I can tell you that right now. And then as far as aerodynamics go, is there a nose cone, like a Mark II nose cone for this, that would just slot directly on here? Let's find out. Mark II. Nope. Okay. Actually, this doesn't have a space. There we go. That's a little bit better. So, I mean, this is a nose cone. Or we could do this adapter here. It's a pretty long adapter, no doubt about that. And then we can put a nose cone up here, just like a regular nose cone, right? So that would end up being... Let's see, which one is the regular? This is way too big, obviously. That's way too big as well. This is going to be too small. The regular nose cone is going to be like this one. There we go. That's more like what we're looking for. I think this is already too big, realistically. I want this thing to be tiny. So we're going to ditch that, and we're going to start over. This time going with a extra small remote guidance unit. I want this thing small. Okay, there we go. And realistically, we could have this theoretically be like a jet engine on here. So it would need a small air intake up front. We're going to need a heat shield that detaches. That's for sure. So let's go ahead and look for air intakes. And we would need, like, that's way too big. That's way too big. That's way too big. Okay. A small circular intake. Something kind of like this. We're not going to need a lot of lifting power. And a fuel tank, this size should be too big. Yes, it is. Absolutely. So we're going to need, like, the Oscars, I think they're called. This is still too big. Yeah, the Oscar Cs. Okay. So that's got the oxidizer in there. I would prefer it if it was just liquid fuel. We shouldn't need the oxidizer. So that's liquid fuel tank there. Is there any of these variants that is only liquid fuel? No oxidizer. I mean, there's this guy, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Beautiful. So we're not going to need much in terms of the ability to fly here in theory. Something like a pair of tail fins may even give us enough lift. Delta Deluxe winglets are even too big, so probably not even tail fins. Tail fins are going to be way too big. Standard canards, they're huge. This thing is tiny. We need to remember that. Absolutely teeny tiny. Which of course means it's light, and that's good. I mean, we could go with these winglets. Even those are too big. Tail fin, huge. I mean, we could, in theory, do something like that. In theory, we could. I don't know how well this thing is going to fly. We can test it in some simulations. But from here, all we would do is look to put in a small jet engine. So, like the Juno. Very cheap, very small. We do need probably some power on this. And how do we want to get that power? That's an interesting question. I do think that having a 1K battery pack is going to be too small. So a Z200 battery pack will be about the right size. So that'll give us our battery pack storage. I don't really want to generate the power for this with solar panels because we're going to be flying, right? An RTG seems overkill, though. I mean, 2 RTGs is going to be really expensive. We're not going to do 2, that's for sure. I'm concerned that if we do something like this, that this just gets destroyed in the atmosphere. I mean, we could clip it in a little bit and test to make sure that it's working. We're not going to want it clipped in that far. Can we grab this? There we go. So something kind of like that. And then move it back here. I do want some sort of a steering device here. So that'll be interesting to try to find something small enough for that. It's going to be huge, right? No matter how we slice it. I suppose we could put on something kind of like this guy. But I don't think that's going to work. Maybe this is enough as it is and it doesn't need any sort of a tail. We'll run a test on that. So, we'll need to be able to slow this down enough, right? Because this is going to burn up in the atmosphere as it is. So, we're going to need to be able to slow this down enough. So, that's way too big. I want like a TD12, I feel like. That's a little small still. TD18? I mean, a TD25 seems like that's going to be way too much. Maybe it isn't, actually. But there isn't an attachment point up here, right? So that's a potential problem. We ditch the small circular intake there. And we attach that guy. We put a heat shield on top of that. So a 3.75 meter heat shield like this would be pretty funny. Lifting this is going to be interesting. Other options would be wings that could fold up. That would be an interesting option. So what that would end up looking like... I mean, where are they going to fold into? Well, we could clip it together in theory. So we go into the robotics, we get a smaller hinge. I mean, I think this is probably the smallest hinge that exists. So we get something like this. We put this into mirror mode. Like that. And then we put this guy rotated like this. Well, not like this. Rotated like one of these. There we go. Ish. Let's turn that snapping on. Thank you. This is some really weird rotation that we've got going on here, so we need to fix this rotation to be more along the lines of this concept. Then, stowed position would put them like that, and flight position would put them like that. I think I hate it. It doesn't save that much space. So we're going to get rid of it, and we're going to put this back on. For the time being, we could just put a giant inflatable heat shield here. Those are pretty cheap. And have it be something like this. Okay. Then as far as landing this thing goes, we want it to splash down reasonably safely, right? So what I want on here is a pair of drogue chutes. So those would go on around here, and then a single main chute on the bottom. With the primary goal of that, of course, being to splash us down gently into the water to complete our contract. So in theory, it would look something like this. We would need an antenna, or would we? We've got our relay antennas there. I feel like we should test this. So we'll call this the Eve splashing machine. Perfect. And we'll save that, and we'll put it out on the pad, and let's run a quick simulation of what this would look like re-entering. Now, we don't have a way to maneuver it in space at this moment. So we're going to bypass the safety check and drop the semi-major axis a little bit. Okay. The question is, how far are we going to drop the semi-major axis? We'll have to experiment a bit with that. So for testing purposes, we will set this over Eve, overriding the safety check. This is the minimum safe orbit here. We're going to drop the semi-major axis to 800,000 and see what that feels like. Okay, that's exactly 100,000. Noted. Okay. So we're going to need to drop this a little further, 795,000. But let's go ahead and inflate this heat shield, and we should be pro-grade. Okay, so that dropped us by 5 kilometers. Good to know. So we now know that we need to drop this to 780,000. Let's go ahead and get oriented first, or mostly oriented. There we go. Cool. We're having a bit of a hard time holding this pro-grade attitude here, but let's just see what this ends up looking like. Of course, we're going to need a bit of a space vehicle here to propel us correctly. I want to roll a little bit here so that our wings are correct. I have no idea if this thing will fly, for the record. I don't know. We'll see. Cool. So we'll hold attitude around here. And we keep the heat shield here for a good long time. Jettisoning this heat shield is going to be real interesting. To be honest, I don't know how we're going to do it unless we can get flipped around after we've decelerated. That's going to be fascinating to see how that ends up happening. So far, we haven't lost our solar panel. Keep in mind, all we're trying to do here is splash this down into the water, right? And then we're going to have to deliver it, but this seems reasonably fine. We're slowing down rapidly, which we would expect with a vehicle this light. If we jettison this heat shield, I expect it to destroy this entire craft at this point. So that's definitely a problem. We're slowing down nicely, no doubt about that. The question is, just how much can this craft take in terms of speed? We're over the sea right now, which is ideal. We may not have to fly much depending on where we actually come down. I just want the ability to fly a little bit, at least, in hopes that we will be able to fly into the sea, if necessary. Another thing we could think about doing is putting a, like, hinge down here so that we can angle ourselves. But what is our thrust to weight here? Currently 0.00. That's because we don't have an air intake on this thing. That's something I was intending to put right here, but I didn't put it in there. It seems like we're holding attitude nicely here. And we're slowing down nicely as well. So that's a good sign. Yeah, this is a very good sign. So as we continue to slow down here, this is looking completely safe at this point. And what we'd like to do now is see if we can get this flipped to retrograde. At this point. If we can, that would be great. Okay. I mean, obviously at this point we don't really need to be able to fly. We're over, well, we're actually over the peaks right now. The sea is back over here. We're basically straight up and down right now. Something like retro rockets or a stack separator here might do the trick. I don't know about that. If we jettison this, I expect it to destroy the whole thing. Let's see. Honestly, retro rockets probably would work, wouldn't they? Okay, so we know we need a couple of things here. That's for sure. We know that we need a space vehicle. So putting in a decoupler here. So this will be like a TD-05 or something, or rather a TD-06. Oh, there's no decoupler for the jet engine. Okay. Noted. There's no attachment point there. So that's going to be a bit of an issue. We can definitely do our radial air intake. So a radial air intake would be something like... Let me get that brought down a little bit. That guy's way too big. So we've got like this radial air intake that's also way too big. There's this diverterless supersonic intake, which might not be bad, actually. But it's huge. Absolutely huge. Okay, we're going to have to re-engineer this thing then. This is going to have to be attached onto something else. Okay. So, we're going to need like a cubic octagonal strut that will go here. On top of that cubic octagonal strut, we can put that hinge that I was talking about. So if we end up landing on land, the idea behind this hinge is that it would be by default like this, and then we can lift it up to give ourselves an angle to take off with, hopefully. So something like that. I would like to clip this strut in a little bit, like that. And then out over here, we would put in another cubic octagonal strut. And then we'd need to get this guy centered up here, right? Something like that. And then we'd need to come down this way as well. So we could do like a modular girder segment XL, but I don't think I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to do a cubic octagonal strut here, as well as one here, like that. Then we're going to go up and down. So this is just going to be like a delivery mechanism, right? And I do want to actually have a stack decoupler here. Coupling. So we do like a TD06 here. Like that. I'd want it to go with this, ideally. Okay, and then that also means that we can hinge this thing to release it. Maybe. We'll see how stable this alligator hinge is, really. But we can bring this up. Do we need to bring it up one more? I think one more is fine. And then we rotate it over and bring it in like that. And then like that. And then bring it up. Because I want to attach it on like this. Right? We're going to need to move that position. So we'll snap that down about like that. We'll turn snapping off now. And as far as how stable this whole thing is going to be, my answer is probably not tremendously. However, that's probably okay. Another thing that we could theoretically do here is have this section have a telescoping cylinder attached to it. Something like that, right? And then this would be moved over to be approximately here. And then we take this guy like that. Approximately. Right? So this would need to be snapped into position. Right there. And I would actually want it to be moved over this way ever so slightly. So the idea behind this is we inflate the heat shield, but when we're done with the heat shield, then we can extend it out this direction, although we may need like a 1p4 looking at this. And that would be to get us some distance. I don't know. I don't think that this idea is necessarily the best. Yeah, I think that we ditch this concept here. We get rid of the telescoping arm. The rest of it, I feel like, is reasonably fine. No, I wanted to grab the entire vehicle here. Nope. There we go. And then attach that here. Okay. Now we come down this direction, and we do the same sort of thing as we did up here, down here. So we duplicate this guy, rotate it to go like that. And that's not actually attached. Let's actually get one more here. And then we attach it like that. We'll snap it into position. That is not what I wanted to grab. Get back on there. There we go. And I want it to be in the move tool. There we go. We'll snap that into position and then move it slightly down, like so. We should strut this on, for sure. So we'll have a strut coming in up here to here, and then a strut coming in here to here. When this decoupler when this decoupler fires, that'll automatically break. I'm actually going to have the strut come in on this side. Okay, something kind of like that. Now, this is obviously off-center, right? So we're going to need to shorten this chain down to, like, here, I think? And this guy's rotating all over the place. We need to get it rotated like... Oh, come on. Almost had it. There, like that. Perfect. Okay, from here, we would attach in over this way. Actually, we would continue to go out this direction. Would we do one more? Yes, we would do one more. And then we would attach down here to give us a attachment point. We'll snap that into position. And from here, we can build our spacecraft. So this is essentially just like a gantry within like a hypothetical fairing, right? That's what this idea is. So that just compensates for our lack of attachment points here. in theory. So then down here, this would not need a decoupler. Actually, maybe it would. I think a decoupler here would be fine. So a TD6 here, something like that, and then we would put in something along the lines of a T400. Like that, and then simply a Terrier. And then we would strut this on. So we'd put a strut here to here, and then we would strut it from here to here. So that would be the spacecraft portion of it. Now, we still don't have a good model for how we're going to detach this heat shield, right? A potential option is we fire the drogue chutes. And then once those are out, we jettison the heat shield. And then we cut the drogue chutes. That is an option. That would put us 5 kilometers above the surface, and we would be able to fly from there, in theory. So as far as this hinge goes, the idea would be that we would hinge it not like this. We don't want it clipped in. But we would hinge it something kind of like this or something. I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't use that as part of the detachment process. Another thing that I did talk about is retro thrusters, which wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea here. But at this point, I want to put in a TD12 decoupler, like that. And then we would need an adapter, in theory, to take this up to Rockamax size. So we would have like a C7 brand adapter here. And is this the correct size for the X232s? Yes, it is. So it'd be something like this. This would be our interplanetary transfer stage, right? And then from here, we could use something like a standard booster. We still don't have a good model, though, for how we're going to get this heat shield on. But if we were to merge in a standard booster here, we can look at what that thrust to weight would look like. So we would merge this guy on like that, and we wouldn't need to have this here. We get rid of that, put this on, get rid of this guy and this guy. They're unnecessary weight. Fantastic. And from here, this would, of course, be deflated. But this should, in theory, give us enough to go up. Enough coverage, I would think. In theory. We're going to have to adjust our staging here, no doubt about that. So these engines all fire. This one would fire substantially later. So where is this engine? There it is. That would move down to here, and that would fire when... Let's see, we need these 2 decouplers to be in their own stage. They would go here. This engine fires when this decoupler goes off. So then we'd need our own stage for this decoupler and this engine. Yes. And then that decoupler happens. This decoupler happens. This engine fires. Yeah, the rest of this looks reasonably okay. So we can save that, and we can't unfortunately change this over to like the ESA style. We could have it just be white. That would be okay, I guess, to match this. So that seems reasonably fine. Okay, so this is a really weird design, and we don't have a good mechanism at this point for detaching this heat shield. We have a little bit of space built in. There's no doubt about that. But I think that the parachutes are going to be the way that we do that. The real question is, what happens with the gantry? And that is a major question here, because we're probably going to get blown into the gantry. That is something that will require testing. Otherwise, this vehicle is relatively good to go. All we need to do at this point is test that it works in flight, and we need to make sure that our heat shield here is detachable. But it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we're going to see about tackling those last 2 problems. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including Catherall, ALS Gamer, Kentuin, James, Shadowwolf, MLohan80, Kentogan, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Unisil, Kadra, Rogue Corvid, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.